Yeah, we can see that perfectly. Thank you.
Lovely.
Beautiful.
Yeah, great.
Disappear now until the end when there'll be time for questions.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, so as I said, my name is Elin Goodwin and I'm a product manager for BMJ Best Practice. And I'm here to talk to you today about when we moved to OpenAthens Keystones and some of the lessons learned along the way. There we go. So, but before I start that, I wanted to talk to you just a little bit about BMJ and what we do. As I'm sure you all know, BMJ stands for British Medical Journal, and we are an international company worldwide that provides evidence-based, the latest health information to health professionals around the world, and to ultimately create a healthier world. And one way that we do that is with BMJ Best Practice, which is our clinical decision support tool. And it provides guidance and support at the point of care in relation to the patient consultation journey. So anything from how to diagnose, what test to order, to then the management guidelines. This is all evidence-based and is also important that it's accessible anywhere at any time. So via our website and our app, we make sure we're trying to make it as easily to access as possible. And so this was one of the reasons why we moved to OpenAthens Keystones. There was OpenAthens and federated access, I should say both OpenAthens and Shibboleth, are very important access routes for us at BMJ Best Practice. And you know, not only is one of the most popular access routes, as well as IP and referrer. However, we were using an out-of-date service that we had implemented using old technology from EduServe. And it was becoming unstable and unsupported. And we had scheduled in time to move. We knew we needed to do it. However, at one day it just sort of fell down, and they were reporting issues and we're getting complaints from libraries and other customers saying, you know, we can't access best practice, we can't log in. And therefore, you know, it was unsupported and there was nothing we could really do. So we had to essentially drop everything and fix it immediately so that we could ensure that our users still had the access that they needed to this important information. So the users, how they were affected, I'll just show you a brief sort of outline of the journey as it was at the time. So they would go to best practice to log in. Then they had to choose between OpenAthens and Shibboleth, which we know also causes some confusion. Then this is a user who's selected OpenAthens. They logged in, and then they would come to best practice. You have the option to create a personal account in order to access the app. And then you had full access to best practice. However, because of these issues, the users got stuck and they couldn't log in. And we had a manual workaround, which was to do multiple refreshes of our servers every day and multiple times a day. But obviously, clearly that wasn't a sustainable solution. And as I said, we needed to drop everything and fix this issue. So the solution, so as I mentioned, you know, we made a decision to move to OpenAthens Keystone, which is, you know, more stable and the latest solution for OpenAthens. And not just that, but it would also a decision made so that we would match what other publishers are doing to meet these kind of RA21 guidelines, which I'll go into and mention a bit further on. But also, most importantly, is that we would unify the user journey based on these new guidelines and the way that OpenAthens Keystone is being implemented across the publishers. And it would ultimately mean that the users would have the same type of access journey across publishers and across anything else that they needed to access within their institutions. all sounds perfect, right? Yeah, it's got a lot of benefits. So it was a more secure and stable access journey. It was unified. And what the OpenAthens Keystone also enabled was to remove that option for the users to have to select OpenAthens shibboleth. It's not something that users necessarily need to know. They don't. They just need to know they can log in here. And this new journey enabled that. And also, as I mentioned, it meets the R21 kind of project requirements, which is essentially a global initiative to unify the user journeys and access journeys across publishers around the world. But we had some challenges. One of the things, as you saw from the screenshots previously, is that we do have an important part, which is the personal account for best practice. In order for us to give access to the app, we have to, the users have to have a personal account at the moment. And also with the moving from the old to the new, the IDs didn't match up. So we had to somehow do a linkage between the two, which is where, again, the personal account became really important so that the users were recognized and authenticated properly. And because we had to drop everything and do it because it stopped working completely, there was no time for user testing, which is, it's a scary thought and you know, a big no-no when it comes to anything new that we want, you know, that any product or publishers would want to release. And also, as part of this, we've realized since then that there was a lot of incorrect assumptions at the time that were made. We did think that the R21 was more widely implemented across publishers, and that the libraries and the users were all ready to take this on and were familiar with the journey and were on board with all the changes. And that wasn't quite right. So one of the key kind of problems that arose was around the new "Where Are You From" page. This enables the users to be able to log in by OpenAthens shibboleth via this unified journey. However, the user had to search for an institution, something that we found out users don't know the institution's names. And a lot of them are also very similar, especially in the UK. And it's hard to then select or know which one to pick. And especially because also users move around, junior doctors at different placements, different medical schools, etc. And again, they just weren't sure which institution should I select. And therefore, they gave up and they couldn't, you know, they just didn't log in, they didn't try. You know, again, was a big issue because we wanted to fix it so that they could access it. When we released this, you know, we got a lot of complaints and the users were having some serious issues logging in. So the journey that we changed and what we went live with, this is just a clear overview. I will just give you a visual example just in a second. But we had to think of, it was a brand new, quite a different journey because we needed to figure out, as I mentioned, about the old IDs and the new IDs, and also to make sure that they were getting the access that they needed, especially to the app as well. So they would go to best practice and log in. And we now have this new unified button, which is the R21 guidelines, and it's access through your institution. And when you click on that, this is the "Where Are You From" page, which where the users would end up getting quite stuck. And once they select their institution, they would then be sent to the various login screens, depending on if it's shibboleth or OpenAthens, for example. And then once they've done that, what we had to do is we had to sort of enable the user to create an account there and then, or to log in with an account that already existed, so that we could link the old IDs and the new IDs together. And once they've done that, there was a one-off task, and then they would arrive at best practice. And there's a one-off task mentioned so that they can, next time, the accounts are all linked up, and it would just be a single sign-on just using their OpenAthens or the UKFed login. So what could we have done better? So one of the key lessons learned, I think, is to never assume. It's something that we all need reminded of, and that was one of the kind of key things that involved a lot of people being unhappy because they weren't familiar with the journey. A lot, the libraries and other customers, they were very unhappy, and they didn't understand why the change had been made. And why we went with this quite different user journey from before. So one of the key things that we've changed since then is we have decided to involve the customers much earlier and at least give 30 days notice for anything that's changing, so that they have time to feedback and to test what we're implementing and make sure that is something that we all agree on. And again, always test with users. It's bear reminding, of course, that this time we were stuck between a rock and a hard place because we needed to fix something urgently. But we could have avoided a lot of the issues that we experienced by testing it with the users. And creating the FAQs and the user guides in advance to then do the communications with the users and librarians, to have them involved in that and to make sure that they understand both before release and after release of the new journeys, and have that feedback coming back to us and have a chance to fix anything before we go and release. And finally, also to have a dedicated access team so that we can ensure that we're not in this position again where something just falls down. We knew it was unsupported, where we had planned to do something, but we hadn't prioritized it well enough. But now we have a dedicated access team that will keep an eye on these things and make sure that we are providing seamless access as much as we can going forward. So next step, we have looked at a waveless URL and supply that to some of our customers already to bypass that kind of main barrier of searching for your institution, which has been a positive sort of impact and has simplified the journey a lot for those affected users that might not know what the institution is. We are also looking at making the personal account now optional, as well as implementing the functionality so that they can log in by OpenAthens on the app directly to again try and remove this complexity to the access journey. Improve our error messaging as well. It's important so that it's clear when something is going wrong, who to contact, and get that continuous feedback as well from the users to improve it. As well as some more advanced solutions, deep links, and as I mentioned in the last one, for the access team, for every one of us to have visibility of clear end-of-life deadlines and then prioritize these items accordingly. So yeah, that was me. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thanks, Elin, that was great. And thank you so much for being so candid about the project and the challenges and the issues.
Yeah.
There was a question that came in that said, what would you do differently if you did the project again? But I think you pretty much covered that. And there was another question about where do you go to find out information around this space, authentications?
In what sense do you mean? This new journey, or just in general about access and
yeah, if you start in general about access and where you go.
Oh, yeah, so we do a lot of research, and we go out and meet a lot of users and customers. Now, unfortunately, with the status we're in at the moment, it's a bit less. Of course, we haven't been able to go out and meet as many people and talk about this as much as possible. But we do have weekly actually meetings set up with both users, which includes end users as well as librarians, as their users too, and to get their feedback and seeing how we can continuously improve about the access and understand how their access is set up at those institutions. Because all of them are also quite a little bit different, which adds complexity a lot too.
Thank you. Georgie's asking, why do you and other publishers insist on personal accounts? One view was to map what users used.
Yeah, so it's very important to, personal accounts have a lot of benefits in relation to CME, CPD, for example, to be able to track that. At the moment, the way that the OpenAthens, because of the security, we won't be able to kind of recognize or see that information of who the user is and be able to track that kind of personal activity that they're doing and the personal learning. And that's one key aspect of it. And as well, a lot of institutions customers want to have clear kind of usage and individuals sort of a bit more individualized usage. Again, not named usage, but a bit more targeted in between institutions, for example, which personal accounts help with as well.
Great, thank you. So we've come to the end of the time. It's time for another break. And so I just want to thank you again. That was a really great, insightful and honest presentation. So thank you for sharing that with us. There is a question that's come in around, Frank's not familiar with the term Keystone as it relates to OpenAthens. So I just wanted to clarify for Frank that Keystone is a OpenAthens product that's for publishers. It's the product publishers use and deploy for single sign-on authentication. But as it's break time, I think it's probably best that we move on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Michelle.